right, welcome to 7 Steps to Designing a Turnkey Company. And today, Julie, what we're going to be talking about is setting the company rules.
Yes.
Julie, why is this such an important factor? I think everybody knows that it takes rules to create law and order out of chaos, right? But I think sometimes nobody's ever really learned how to set rules and the different types of rules that there are in the company.
Yeah, I think that's very true, and I think part of that, you have some people who are brand new, who've never been in the workforce before. You have some people who maybe have worked from home and never worked for somebody else, and then you have other people who have been in the workforce where there were a totally different set of rules than maybe what you want in your company. So being setting the rules right up front with your employees or any kind of relationship that you may be having within the company is a great way to get things started and make sure everyone's off on the right foot going forward.
And Julie, I think that rules are very important because, in a way, they describe the guidelines as to which we're trying to do our job, the way we're trying to conduct ourselves, and the way we want to communicate with each other. And so that's what we're going to talk about today on today's webinar, which is how to set the company rules. And just to give you an overview, there are 3 different types of rules that we're going to talk about on today's call. One is the rules of relationship, which is the common rules that we are going to create a culture of the way we treat each other inside of our company and the way we treat customers, right? Sort of a culture rule, I call that one.
Yeah.
Makes sense? The next one is called the rules of ownership, that the owner of a company has specific rules that they have to follow and certain boundaries and guidelines that they have to stay within. And then there's the rules of employeeship, which is the rules of, again, how you do your job and also how we're going to communicate value to our customers and also to our coworkers. Does that make sense? And so we're going to go over these different rules one by one. And Julie, where would you like us to start today? What do you think would be a good place to start?
Let's start right with number 1, the rules of relationship.
Hey, Julie, what is the rules of relationship? Is something nobody thought about. And so the rules of relationship, is this something that we should be putting in a desk drawer somewhere? And how closely is this related to the values and the vision of the company, would you say?
Well, very closely related, and I would like not to see them put in a desk drawer. I would love to see them somewhere posted or painted or somehow, out in the open so that everybody understands that. And it's funny because when you may not realize it when you're out and about, but I do because we've been dealing with this for so long. But when I go from store to store, and I go into a store, a lot of times I look for that to see if they put it out in the open for even customers, to see, for that matter.
Right.
Or if you're on a website, you might notice that some people post it on their website in certain places. So I know I was on the Zappos website the other day, and they had one of their rules down at the very bottom about creating happiness, for everybody.
Right.
It's nice when you see that. It really helps you as a customer as well as an employee to understand what this company is all about and what kind of culture they're really trying to create.
And I know these rules sound like they're real just common sense, that anybody should know these rules. These are kind of the rules that you would think you would learn when you're younger. Unfortunately, we all kind of grow up with a dysfunctional set of rules, just like we have dysfunctional relationships.
Sure.
We also have dysfunctional rules of these relationships. Does that make sense?
Right.
As a typical example, I know a company that said that they had to define how we would share gratitude with a customer. That every time that somebody did something for you, like you gave them your name, or if you asked a coworker to could you please hand me that stapler, that you'd always have to return it with a thank you. That we always want to maintain the gratitude in our company. That one of our company values is gratitude, and so we expect that anytime one employee does something for another employee, or anytime a customer does something for us, like schedules a call, or anytime gives us an opportunity, that anytime somebody does anything for anybody, when you're working inside these walls, that sharing gratitude is one of those things. Is that a good example of that? What do you think of that?
I think that's a great example to use. I know one of my favorites is always the Ritz-Carlton, which is, that we're ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen.
Really
And
good.
that, can mean to you whatever you want it to mean, but somehow when you say it, it kind of, gives you an idea. Okay, we are ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen. So I don't need to explain to you what it means. It probably means something different to each one of us, or a little different. But I think we get the general gist of what it is, and I think that's also an important aspect of creating these type of rules of relationship, or creating these culture. Is it's not necessarily that you have to come up with a rule and define exactly what it means. It's going to be a little abstract to everybody and what that means.
Well, and there's some things that are specific, like always sharing gratitude whenever receiving something could be a rule you put in writing. Just make a poster of it if you want to. Another rule would be when making a request, always remember to say please when you're making a request. So if within our internal ranks you're always saying, could you please schedule a call for me? Oh, thank you so much for scheduling that for me. Listen, I know you're saying you may be putting on this good face for your coworkers, but Julie, in the absence of something as simple as please when you're making a request, or a thank you when you're receiving something from somebody, basically the civilization kind of erodes into just kind of people shooting things back and forth. We wind up shouting across the room at other employees, and we really don't take the time or care with our communications. Does that make sense? So what we're trying to do is say, even the most common request you make of somebody, or when somebody does something for you, to say please and thank you, is just two solid rules of relationship that when you work in this company, this is how you're expected to behave. And this is what we expect of you.
Well, I think that also, though, the reason I say sometimes it's a little more abstract is because even though, you may put those rules into place, the owner still has to convey what it is that you're looking for in that. So if you put a always use please and thank you rule into effect, then the owner better be always using please and thank you.
Absolutely.
And if that's not the case, then maybe you don't want to.
So the rules
put it
of
exactly like that.
So the rules of relationship are rules that surround the entire company, meaning that anybody who deals with the company, a customer calls us, a vendor calls us, our coworker, we communicate with our basically the owner talks to our team. Whenever we're asking our team for something, there's a request to please, to make sure that you're saying that, and the thank you at the end. If you're receiving something from your team and somebody hands them the paperwork, well, thank you so much for giving me that paperwork, type of thing.
Right,
So even the most common requests that are received and the most common requests that you make, please and thank you is a good one. Another one I remember is only saying what you can do. So at this company, we only tell people what we can do. We never say the word can't or don't. And that's a rule of relationship. So if somebody says, hey, can you work till 5 tonight? And you say, well, I can work till 4:30, is what I can do. Or instead of saying I can't, right? So basically we don't deal, one of those rules of relationship is to say, we don't deal in the negative. We only deal in what we can do for people. Does that make sense? There's a good rule of relationship there.
Sure. I always know you like to bring up, I'm not going to word this probably in the best way, but you always like to bring up how can we provide value, to these clients when we're talking to them, or how can we provide value to anyone,
Right.
For that matter. So you're always about giving value to people as they call up.
Totally.
Whether that's a matter of your time, or it's a matter of giving them some freebie on the website, or sending them an article, or that kind of thing. You always like to provide value for people.
Well, that's so right, Jill. I mean, if a customer says, can you do it any cheaper? I have another guy who will come out here for $39 and you're charging $59. You say, what we can do is we can apply a coupon we have in the Yellow Pages for $10. That would make it $49. That's what we can do. So whatever you can do, okay, can you lower, I had your guy who charged me $500. I shopped around and found it somewhere else for $300. You say, well, here's what I can do. I can have the technician talk to you and let you know what he did for this work, because we do things different than other companies. So here's what I can do. I can schedule an appointment with the technician so we could go over it one more time so you can understand that. Make sense? So basically, those are a lot of rules of relationship are basically rules that we expect everybody in the company to follow. and that would, when you're discipline, like for instance, discipline. If you're trying to instead of saying criticism or critiquing somebody else and saying they did something wrong, you could make a rule of a relationship. Let people know what you'd like to see, not what they did wrong. Make sense? So if you're going to talk to a coworker, it's like, Janet, could I ask you to please fill out that information for the customer's address, as opposed to saying, Janet, you screwed up that call and you didn't fill out the customer's address, right? So emphasizing what people are doing wrong would be a bad rule of a relationship. Telling people what you'd like to see them do correctly when you're talking to a coworker. Janet, I'm going to need you to get the phone number on these calls. Is that okay? If I can do that for you, because the phone number wasn't completed on that invoice we just saw there, or whatever type of thing. So the bottom line is the rules of relationship are, all the different things about when one person talks to another person, either within the company or from a vendor standpoint, to always have all those different, friendly influences in the company, and basically bringing the best version of yourself to our company every single day. And in a way, turning customer service not just toward the customers, but to make sure the internal people get good customer service as well too.
Yep, exactly.
Julie, anything else you'd like to add to that part of it? How important it is that? And I think you got a good point there. The owner sets the tone with this thing. How many times have you seen it to where the owner sets rules that they themselves don't follow?
It happens every day. It's I think that's something that for every owner, it's a learning, or kind of a learning curve that you have to go through, that you may not realize that you're not doing the things that you want done. And once you go through that, for some of us, then you just realize you have to keep improving, just like anybody in life, right? Anything that you want done, you have to keep working at it, keep practicing it, and try to get better. That's all you can really ask for. But the better you are at your own rules, if you're not going to be a neat, organized person, to say that you're going to require that, if your desk is always a mess, I guess is what I'm saying, to say that you're going to require your employees to keep a neat, clean desk and hold them to that, is going to really be an impossible task.
And Julie, I think there's some other ones here too. I just want to kind of just expand on this just a little bit. One of the biggest and toughest rules to follow in the rules of relationship that we had set in our company when we ran a contracting business was to only talk about somebody when they were present. So if one employee came to me about another employee, I'd say, well, I really don't feel comfortable talking about the other employee without them being here. Could we just have that person here so we could get their input on what you're talking about, so they could hear it directly from you? So when one person said, hey, Randy stole my screwdriver out of my toolbox, I'd say, well, let's do this. I'll get Randy together, and you come in tomorrow at 7 o'clock. We'll talk about where that screwdriver is and what Randy has to say about that.
Yep.
So basically, as the owner or manager or coworker in a company, we never allowed a situation, and this is hard. This is one of probably the hardest rule of relationship, is to only talk about other people when they're present. What do you think of that rule?
I think that is a tough one. It's easy to go back and start a conversation and be like, oh, I'm mad at this person, or this person didn't do this with a coworker. It's very easy. Even us as owners, it's easy for us to do, though probably a little more acceptable since that's our. But with that said, even though it might be more acceptable because we're two owners talking to each other, it doesn't mean that it's any better, because that's just me griping to you or you griping to me about an employee, instead of bringing that person in and handling the situation.
Yeah.
Because it's a complaining session.
It's like, really, it's like a situation, and this is very difficult. Like when somebody's not doing their job right, or you suspect somebody is dishonest in your company or something, there are liabilities to the company. Sometimes our passion to save the company, or not have people steal from us, or all these different things that somebody does in a toxic way, our passion kind of bubbles over, and we just want to nail it down and say, Randy's a thief. He stole my screwdriver, as opposed to saying, you know what, can we have a meeting with me and Randy together? So what happens, you're teaching your team to say, you know what, let's have constructive conflict and this is one of those things about rules of relationship, is that we're going to have constructive conflict at this company, meaning that we're going to talk about things and then bring it to a conclusion, and we're going to move forward with a clear way of doing things at the end of our conversation. But one of the things we don't want to do is to become the owner who goes to the other employees about one of the coworkers in the company, or one coworker always complaining about one of the service techs in the field, something like that. We just don't want to show we have a culture. This is the way I think rules of relationship are set, to say we will treat each other with respect, integrity, and honesty, even if that's not popular. We need to confront these situations. I call it constructive conflicts. And in the absence of a constructive conflicts comes backbiting and talking in the background. And I tell you, Julie, it's not just contracting companies that can learn from this, but all companies, even people in the contracting industry. We see a lot of consultants and things like that. One consultant talks bad about another consultant. It's like, what? I really don't feel comfortable talking bad about any other consultants or any other professionals who help contractors. Even when somebody tells me that the person wasn't very competent, I'm like, well, that's something it's something that you went through. It's something I really wouldn't feel comfortable talking about without that person being here. So if you want me to talk about it, I have to have that person involved, or for me to do that. So this is not just at work. You would benefit from this at home too. What you think of that?
I truly believe that, yes.
And I think a lot of these things come down to rules we learned in Sunday school that we kind of just put by the wayside, if you will.
I think that also is true. Yes, I wanted to sum it up as the golden rule, but there's probably a little bit more than that in there. But you could almost sum it up into that.
I think you're right. It's like what would you expect somebody to treat you like? If somebody said something bad about you, what would you prefer that somebody said? They just sit there and talk bad about you, or would you prefer that they bring you into the conversation so you could give your 2 cents to be able to say what really happened or what not, type of thing.
Right,
so the rules of relationship, you're saying, well, how can you legislate this? Well, you know what? I'm not sure if how far the HR department has to come into this at all to create write-ups and things like that. I think sometimes it's just a small correction, like when somebody asks you for something, you say, "Did you say the magic words?" And so, what's that? Well, it says around the poster there. You remember the magic word? What's that? Oh, please, could you please get me that thing? There you go. Yeah, let me go ahead and get that for you. But before I give it to you, what do you have to say? All right, thank you. I know. Again, slow down a little bit. Let me go ahead and don't forget, we're ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen here, right? And so, I think it just makes the workplace a much funner place to work in, much more positive. And you're not going to go to work to tear people down or to get sorry. So the opposite of the rules of when you don't have rules of relationship, what tends to happen is the company creates a certain sarcastic behavior with each other and with customers. We start complaining about customers and we start talking about customers behind their back. And so if you were an effective owner of a company, if you saw 2 employees talking about a customer behind their back, I'd say, well, who's going to talk to the customer about this? And if the answer is nobody, I'd say, well, then stop talking about it, because it doesn't make sense that we're talking about a customer without them being present. I refuse to talk about this. I refuse to talk about the customer without the customer being part of this conversation. And that takes a lot of courage to do that, doesn't it, Julie? Yes. So the rules of relationship it started out sound like something easy to do, doesn't it? Please and thank you. It turns out that showing respect, integrity, and honesty to everybody we deal with can sometimes take a lot more courage than we think.
Sure.
So the rules of relationship, and this is something you can put in writing, and this might, Julie, would you say it's something that the owner should just hand down, like the 10 Commandments on the rules of relationship? Who should be involved with creating these rules, you think would be a good idea?
Oh, I think if you could, have everybody involved in it, that would be, probably your best bet. So if everybody gets involved in how we all want to be treated, I think not only do you come up with some good rules that way, but you get everybody on board, because they're part of the process, and making sure that we are putting into place all the things that people want to see and hear.
And if everybody can be part of the process, not just when we originally create the rules, but if you see that rules of relationships are commonly not being followed, then we have to maybe review those rules to say, let's review our rules of relationship, because I noticed that some people are falling short in a certain amount of areas. Are we all saying that this is not important anymore? Because I noticed we set the rules before. So if you set the rules initially with your employees, maybe different employees come into place and are not aware of these rules. I think it's important that here's how we treat each other when you join this company, because this creates a culture. And I'm going to tell you something, Julie. I don't care how much sales training, how many contracting business gurus who are warriors and things like that out there trying to save the universe are going to happen. I don't care. I don't care about that, because your culture will kill any training or opportunity for you to improve, no matter who brings that message to you. And if you have a culture that's sarcastic, if you have a culture where you're seeing the worst in people, and you have a culture where you talk bad about people behind their back, then all the training you do in the world, when those people leave that meeting, then your training just gets deflated and it doesn't do anything at all. Make sense,
Yes,
sir?
very true.
So culture kills your results. Culture overrules everything. If your people have decided that they're going to be sarcastic and negative about things, and they're going against those rules of relationship, it can kill everything from the end results to the individual jobs and the relationships that each people have here. Make sense? So that's the rules of relationship. Ideally, you would create them as a team, you'd review them as a team, and you would post them public in several places throughout the company. Make sense?
Yes.
And we don't have to hide these from the customer either. It's important the customer knows here's how we try to treat people too. So
Oh, yeah.
I know, like you said, the Ritz-Carlton makes us as a public, their rules of relationship are public. Here's how we treat people, not just customers, but employees too.
Yep.
Make sense? Now we have number 2. Which is number 2 here, Jill? We're going to go over the second part of the worksheet, which is the rules of relationship, and then we're going to go over
The rules of ownership.
Rules of ownership, yeah.
So making sure that the rules of ownership is really about how the rules that the owner must follow and kind of lead. So the rules of relationship obviously are part of that rules of ownership, because we just mentioned that if the owner is really not following those rules or not participating in those rules, that they're going to fall apart on you. So the rule of ownership there is really how that owner is leading the company.
Julie, I think it's the leadership rule. And so what is the owner's responsibility? Everybody's got responsibility and everybody's got accountability. I mean, Julie, you don't have to go very far than to watch any sports team. And if you listen to sports radio, inevitably, if your team is not doing well, some of the wisest fans will always say, well, the problem is we got bad ownership. They always invest in the wrong kind of players. They're putting money into people who don't care, into those prima donnas. They're not building with the farm system. So it's always the blame goes to the top eventually, right? And so owners need to realize, here's something I don't think the owners realize. Here's what I just don't think they realize. Owners are not employees. Let me repeat that again. There is a line between ownership and what an owner is responsible for, and there is a line below that where employees are responsible for certain things. Now, the rules of relationship encompass all those things, right? They encompass the owners and the employees and all the vendors and everybody else who deals with the company.
Yeah.
But the rules of ownership are specific. Let's talk about some of these things. Number 1, the rule of sharing the values and the vision of the company, that the owner should be good at understanding, what is this company about? Are we about a planned service company? Are we more of an emergency company? Are we a service company or a construction company? Do we believe in doing more calls, or do we believe in doing fewer calls but being more profitable? You know what I'm saying there? So do we believe in customer service, or do we believe in just doing as many calls as fast as possible, right? And so there's different things that you as an owner have a vision for the way this place is supposed to run. It's your job, and this is the number 1 rule of a relationship for owners, to be able to, number 1, have a distinct vision as to what this company looks like when it works its best, and number 2, to be able to convey that and share that with the employees. Julie, how important is that vision, that to be able to share that vision in a way that's productive?
It's very important. I mean, it's definitely, again, as you talked about, it's part of that rules of relationship. It's part of what creates the culture. If the owner does not do a good job of sharing the vision and the mission or the direction that the company wants to go in, then really nobody really knows where they're going. There really is no leader at that point. So that's really, as you mentioned, it's the main job of an owner, that they're there to guide us and take us in a certain direction. So if you don't do a very good job at that as the owner, you're going to find that you don't have very good followers, if any followers at that point. So
the number 1 job of an owner is to be the visionary of the company, to say, here is the method of operation, here is the sales process, here is the communication that we want you to have with our employees. So you're designing the way this company is supposed to run. You're creating a vision and then creating a design or a wireframe, if you will, as to what does this company look like when it answers the phone, when it dispatches a service tech, when it does the paperwork, when it shows prices to people in the field, when it does the work. What is the stamp of approval of our company that people can tell this is a job that our company has done?
Right.
Make sense?
Exactly.
And so it'd be easy to distinct. So people say like that. There's this key word that people will say a lot of, which is this thing where you're creating a what do you call it? A unique selling position, if you will. So a lot of times people say you need to create a USP. They put that in a trite little term like that, right? But the USP expands out to a lot of different areas. And why is it unique? Well, because when you call us up, we always guarantee you can go to the front of the line. It just costs $159. We always give people a chance to do better service. It costs more, but we're not a cheap company. So our vision is that we're not cheap, but we are definitely more premium. Make sense? Those are visions and talking points that the owner has to have down pat.
Yeah, I think when you're saying that, you're creating that vision or you're creating that USP, everything else that you're doing within the company has to support that. So you don't want to say we're a more premium company, but yet your technicians don't have uniforms, or they go around in t-shirts and jeans, or the trucks are not nicely logoed or wrapped, or your employees internally don't. Maybe customer service doesn't have headsets, or they have old computers that don't work very well. So you can't be a premium company and then not have everything else back you up. Granted, it doesn't mean you have to go out and buy everything, perfectly brand new.
Exactly.
But you're working towards that goal.
Well, without having the values and the vision being expressed to your employees, basically, whenever somebody joins your company from another company, then the other company's values and visions are being templated onto your company. So let's say that you're a small company, maybe 4 or 5 people in your company, and you hire 2 new techs from a different company. Well, if you don't have a firm values and vision about how this company works, where you can, because this goes toward the training, when I develop my people, I'm going to need to know how we do things here and what's the vision, how we do things. So if you don't have that clarified and put down in writing and able to train it properly, then when those 2 people join that group of 4 technicians, we've just taken and added, basically now 30% of our company is operating with a different system than we intended it to operate. Does that make sense?
Exactly.
And so this is what creates chaos. We think we just won the lottery because we hired a new technician and finally somebody applied at a job for our company and we hired the person. And we think it's so happy, we're full of joy, The problem we forget is that, sharing the visions and values of this company, because the most important company right now after this new employee joins us is the company that is here now, not the past company.
Yep.
And it doesn't make a difference. If you ever hear employees like, we used to do it that way over there, it's like, John, you can stop saying that now because that has no meaning to me. I'm not gonna, here's what I tell you we can do. We can definitely do it the way we do it here. That's what I want you to learn. Make sense? Number 2 is the profit awareness of an owner, because the owner is the main investor. Julie, how important is that we make sure that people are making a profit and that the owner is responsible for the profit?
Extremely important. Without any profit in the company, obviously we cannot go back and invest in things that we need for the company, invest in our people with training or benefits or pay. Invest in the trucks needed or upkeep needed, the facilities needed, the building needed. So without some type of profit there's no way for us to continue to invest in what the company needs in order to be able to grow and have those top-notch people in place going forward.
Julie, profit awareness is a funny subject because you would think it would be obvious that when you start a business, at the end of the day, we are in business to make money, and there's different kinds of money you're making. Some money, as you make a profit, is used to reinvent yourself and to try to reinvest in the company, to reinvent the different things, to improve, to get better software, to get better training and things like that. So that's part of that profit. Another part of the profit is to handle emergency situations that come up. We need to make profit so when things happen that we're not expecting, we can fix those things and have enough money to fix those things, right? And then there's things that happen that we want to improve our infrastructure and get new trucks and invest in that kind of stuff as well too, right? And that's where profit's needed as well too. And then finally, the owner put money into this company to start it. Every owner deserves to get a return on that investment. It's not just something you put money into to make a statue, a bronze statue of yourself in the front of your shop. I mean, if you're going into business to create an ivory tower of you, to say here's the golden image of me because I created this company with my name on it, and you're not making money, it's just the biggest. I would say. Any owner, it's malfunction on the job of an owner if they are not making profit. Make sense?
It really is, and I mean, that's an interesting point that you're bringing up because I know, a lot of people say follow your dream and do what you want to, do what you'd want to do, and that is all wonderful. And I love the idea that you're doing something that you love. But if you are not making money at it, if you're not making a profit at it, you can't live. So,
Julie, let me just say something. Some of the biggest businesses in the world are charities. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
so quote unquote nonprofits. Some of the biggest churches, some of the biggest, United Way. These are large businesses with gigantic facilities with tons of people who telemarket. This is a business, okay? If they don't make money, they can't help other people. They can't help inner city children that you see advertisements for. They can't help the poor puppies who are in those kennels and things like that with those big eyes and sad eyes. They simply can't help it if they're not making money and making a profit in a way. So where does that profit go? Well, in those cases, it's supposed to go to the people that you're running the charity for. However, there is overhead in every charity. Somebody's got to make a phone call. Right off the bat, as soon as you open up a phone line, you now have overhead. And now that's where some of the profit's going to go to. Make sense?
So what they realized in order to have a charity, they needed to pay people.
So even a charity needs to make a profit. Obviously, a contracting service business would also need to make a profit for all these same reasons. And I tell you what, if you are if you're an owner who thinks that profit is something that just happens by chance or by the weather, then you're not really fit to run a company. To be fit to run a company, you got to say, I make profit happen through courageous decisions. And those courageous decisions are made with the number 3 thing on our worksheet, which is people awareness, people development. If you see people who are not being profitable, basically here's what I did in my company, looking at our rules of ownership, Julie, is one of the rules I had is that every single day I walk to the company and I just look at every single employee and ask them, are you making money for this company? And so how is this person making money to make us profitable? Or is this person holding us back from making a profit? Are they an engine or are they an anchor? Does that make sense?
Are they creating value? Or
are you creating value? That's a good way of putting it. It's a good, nice verbal package there, Julie. I like your take on it. But your job is to make sure that you're developing your people. That if somebody's not profitable in your company, I look at every single employee who works for a company is a profit center. Either we are creating a way to make profit for this company, or you are just taking up space and you're sucking resources from the company and you're not giving anything back. Make sense? And so that would be the number 3. So number 1, sharing visions and value. Number 2, profit awareness. And number 3, developing your people to make sure that people are being trained, they're being coached, they're being oriented and onboarded, and most importantly, they're being held accountable. So your job as an owner is those 4 areas. When it comes to people development, it's to find the right people, to onboard and train those people, to coach them, and to also hold them accountable. That's your job as an owner when it comes to dealing with your people. Your job is not to go out there and indulge yourself in the actual work that you do. I mean, let me tell you about this, guys. If you're going to develop somebody and go out there, if you own an electrical contracting company, and you indulge yourself by going on a call on your own, just to get a little vacation from all the chaos that's going on in your company, you are really a pathetic owner. Because owners of companies, your job is to develop people. So if you're going to go out and do a call, bring somebody with you to develop somebody to do that job. Make sense? Exactly. So that's what I'm talking about. So how do you know that you're dysfunctional in this area? You have no vision, no values. You're not, profit just happens. It's not something you're making happen every day. Making courageous decisions to either coach, onboard or hire or fire some people that need to be done, so make sure we're making a profit. And finally, to be able to train, coach, and hold your people accountable. That is your job as an owner, to make sure that we're getting a return on investment and to make sure that we're developing the people to do so.
I would imagine that if I was an owner and I found myself taking a little vacation from the company by going out and do a job in the field, that I probably shouldn't be an owner anymore.
Go get a job apply for your company probably needs people, so apply as an employee for your company. That's what.
But
you should do.
I would say if you were an owner and you decided you wanted to know how a department of your company was working, how things were going in that area, that it wouldn't be so wrong for you to necessarily step into the phones and answer some phone lines, or go out in the field with somebody and see how things are going. Yes, that would be perfectly normal for me.
I believe that. And, it's like, I remember when we first got involved with the home energy technology, we purchased a blower door. Before I just gave it to an employee, I said, well, let me do this. Let me go out myself and prototype this to see if it can be done. I want to purchase it, get the education on it, and I want to make sure that I'm able to teach it. So in a way, I am developing my people, even though I'm doing some calls on my own. What I'm doing is prototyping a process and testing the process, so that when I train people, I know the process works. So that's okay. That is perfectly fine to do that. But if you're just doing it to say, I'm going to become a technician today and just ride in go grab a truck and go out there and ride, if you're not doing it to prototype a change, or if you're not doing it to develop somebody in the company, then you're doing the wrong thing.
And I would imagine it's probably difficult for many owners who have come from, being out in the field. You start off where you're out in the field to make that transition to ownership. Because first of all, it takes a lot of training, of their own to get to that point and learn all the different things that are needed to do there. And the pressures and decisions that you make are much greater than the ones that you're probably making when you're out in the field, that you've already learned and probably had a lot of time to practice. So, but it does get better as you go down that line, as you educate yourself and get your own training, to figure out how to fulfill that initial promise of your values and your vision, gets easier along the way.
It certainly does, Julie. And we're going to end, finally, the last segment of this webinar. We've already covered the rules of relationship, which apply to everybody, the rules of ownership, and now when the owner crosses the line and does get into a truck to perform as an employee, so if you're going to become the manager of your team or the coach of your team, or you're going to do dispatch today, you're going to answer the phone, you're going to do a service call, or even go out and do an installation, you have now crossed the line, which is okay. You cross the line between ownership and employeeship. That's okay if that's what the company needs today. If the company needs that from you today, then go ahead and do it. Makes sense? But understand this. As the owner of the company, whatever rules that you expect employees to follow, so whatever uniform you expect them to wear, whatever words you're expecting them to communicate with, whatever script they're supposed to follow, whatever paperwork they're supposed to fill out, however they're supposed to organize that truck, if you're going to cross that line and take an employee's job, you better follow the same rules that you designed for your employees. This is what a lot of people miss. Like, don't just wear your what do you call it, your Dockers and your golf shirt and go out and do a service call today. If you're going to get in the truck and do a service call, whatever you would expect your service techs to look like, I got news for you, Charlie. Get the uniform on and get out there. That's what you're supposed to do.
Yep.
So a matter of fact, at our company, when I was training other employees, what I told Jenny, our dispatcher, I said, Jenny, the only way you could get fired in this company instantly is to let me break a rule that I'm supposed to follow when I'm out and doing a call.
Right.
So if I'm supposed to do paperwork a certain way, if I'm supposed to do the rules of relationship a certain way, and you're not holding me accountable to that when I'm in front of another employee, that's on you, and you will get fired for that. So make sure you hold me accountable. I'm giving you that license to hold me accountable, I told her. And so basically, when an owner, whoever decides to do a call or answer the phone, it's got to be done by design, and you're supposed to follow the script. Believe me, if you expect customer service reps to wear a headset and follow a script, then when you answer the phone, guess what you should be wearing, Julie?
You should be wearing a headset and follow the script.
That's exactly it. So this is a big part of what's wrong in a lot of companies. Owners kind of Hollywooding it and just kind of coming in I call them project terrorists. You know, see what I'm saying there? But they come in, dive in for a day, and kind of create chaos and disruption. Don't follow the vision that they said, and just start answering the phone by reaching for a phone, or just start going out and doing a call. Matter of fact, a customer calls them on a cell phone, they go out and do the call, never let the customer service or dispatch team know, and now we got this customer who's calling who's unhappy because the thing's not working, and we didn't even have him on our schedule. We don't even have an invoice booked.
Yeah.
You know, so if you're out there doing side jobs on your own company as an owner, or if you have anybody who's doing that, then the rules of ownership are not being followed. So Julie, go ahead and just give us a little bit of the. I just want to kind of talk about the separation between the ownership rules, which are rules of profit, vision, and people development. That's your job. And then when you jump in and become an employee, now you have to follow those rules. Go ahead and give us more on that.
Well, we're going to start off with just really the training, the job description that you need to follow, and the kind of vision alignment that you want with everything. So again, if you're going to be going into that position of an employee, you want to make sure that you're following the job description that you have the appropriate training already in that area, and that it follows along with the vision, you know, that the owner has put in place, whether that be you or somebody else. But when you're stepping into the position, just as you said, you know, you want to make sure that you're following the same thing that everyone else has done. So if you're going to be a CSR for today, you want to make sure that you've gotten out that job description and you've read through it completely, and you remember all the things that you need to do to be a CSR today. So you're not you know, for me, it would be very disrupting as a CSR if it was busy today and we had somebody call in sick, and now the owner decided to step in, or a manager decided to step in, and they were not following the same script that I was, or they were not wearing the headset, or they were not typing everything right into the software. I would be in disarray, just overhearing them in the background. You know, it would cause me some concern, and how I was talking to my customers directly at that point. So I would want to make sure that they're following all of those, following everything that's already been put in place right from the very beginning.
Right. So the rules of employeeship really kind of start out by taking the vision that was set in the rules of ownership. The company has a vision, the owner has. Now we're making that vision come to reality by creating a written document, starting with job priorities. If you wanted to start by saying, here are the 9 things that this job is going to be doing, we're defining this is what you're doing here. And if you start, what's a really good exercise, you start putting down the priorities, you start realizing this person has too many job priorities or not enough job priorities. Why do I have this person working here, right? And the job priorities can now be filled in to make a job description, which is really a description of the way we do our work in the highest quality fashion possible. Like you saying, following that script, entering the information. How do we enter the information? How do we use our software? How do you reboot the computers? The different things. How do we do it here is the workmanship part of it, right? How do we do an install if you're an installer? How do we do a service call? It should be defined in broad strokes first, and then filled in gradually over a period of time. Make sense?
And I think that's a good point right there, is sometimes thinking about doing a job description can be a pretty overwhelming task. So if you start off with the job priorities just to begin with, and you at least have that, now you can kind of fill things in, or you can have your people fill things in for you. So if your number one job priority is answering the phones, well, then we're going to start filling in by how do we answer the phones at this point. Here's where the phone goes, here's the headset that goes along with it, here's how we answer a call, here's how we hang up the call, here's how we transfer a call, here's how the voicemail works. So those are all just very simple.
You fill in the detail.
You start filling in the detail now. And that's why it can be overwhelming, because when you start thinking about all the detail, it's like, you're like the kid on Home Alone, where he's like,
Yeah. Go crazy.
So
it could drive you nuts.
It's a lot. It's a lot there to really think about. So if you start with the basics of the job priorities and then start filling things in, even have your people, fill things in for you, and it can become a more detailed product down the line. So it might not be complete when somebody starts with you, but it will be over time. You're going to find over the years you're going to keep adding. So it's not a a static document
No, it
that, as you
changes.
said, it's not something that we stick away in our drawer and we never see again. It's something that should be out there that everyone can see, that if we need to add to it, we can add to it
Right.
or
And so,
adjust.
the job description, it starts with job priorities and then fills in the detail. And this is a vision alignment. So we have a certain vision. We've now documented the vision, and we are going to now be able to use this document as a training document so that when people are trained using a job description, when you first start with the company, you can't blame yourself anymore to say, oh, they were never told, or man, I got to train my team on how to answer the phone, or it's been done. It's something that's part of a permanent document that you've had here at that
Right.
point. So the quality workmanship that you do, which is the time that you come into the company. So when you first get into our truck, what happens from the time you get in the truck to the time you punch out at the end of the day? What are the different things that are likely to happen, and how do you do those things, right? The different priorities that happen. Now, for internal people, same thing. When you come into the office, what happens from the time you come in to the time you start your job? What are the likely priorities you're going to be having in your day? You kind of create an outline, and then the more detail how you do it. Now, the other part of it is the quality of the communications that we're going to have, the words. So, guys, when you're creating the rules of employership, there's really basically two sets of rules. One is the rules of what we do, and that's the quality of the work standards we do. And the other thing is the things that we're going to say, and that's the quality of the communication standards. Now, how important is it that we have people who are able to do the work properly and have a high quality of work in what they do, but also the communication of that?
Oh, I think it's very important that those two, because they generally go hand in hand, right? So generally what we're communicating to somebody is eventually going to be done. So if the quality of one is not good or doesn't match up with the other one, what you're going to find is that you're going to have unhappy customers in the long run.
Yeah, so if a job description for a dispatcher, for instance, says when a technician is completed, give them another call. That's what you're supposed to do, right? But then here's what you say when you give them that call. Here's how you're supposed to say that to design how it's supposed to be said. So you don't have to go any further than looking at a franchise. If you went to a Chick-fil-A or a McDonald's or anything like that, you would see people when you first walked into the restaurant, it would be said to you by design. Whatever they said, welcome to McDonald's, welcome to Chick-fil-A. How can we make you smile, or whatever they might say to you, right? So everybody's got different things they say when they come to your table and they ask you different things. Every franchise has a certain way that we talk and a certain way that we place the order. We look at a certain how do we do it? Well, we ask people, how many menus would you need? That might be probably put in writing in a job description that can be used to train everybody in the franchise. Because basically, everybody who runs a company out there, even if you only have 3 people, you have to pretend like you have 300 people. Make sense? That's really the thing behind this, is to do that.
Well,
So
I think that's a good point too, that you're saying there, and I'm not sure if we brought it up already or not. Is not only just you're doing that obviously to make sure that what you're saying matches up what you do, but also so it's consistent, right? So you mentioned, for instance, a restaurant. If you walk into a restaurant and one time they ask you how many menus you want, and the next time they don't, you may be sitting down with less menus than you need for everybody at the table. And that, I don't know if that's an important thing or not, but as restaurant goes, but that's an example that you gave, so I wanted to follow up with that. But the same thing with, let's say, customer service. If one of your customer service reps are making sure that every time we tell the customer what the diagnostic charge is when we go out there, and now the other one is not, you're going to have some customers who understand that, some customers who don't, and you're going to have technicians who are going to be frustrated in the field because they're going to have to try to explain it or let the customer know that that this is what they need to pay at this point. So it can be a very frustrating situation. So that communication about what you're doing and then what gets done later on really needs to happen on a consistent basis as well.
it really does, Julie. Well, just to wrap it up here, the rules of relationship, the rules of ownership, and the rules of employeeship, all these things come together to create what I would call a training plan, right? I mean, training people in the way we want to treat each other and the rules of relationship, and then training owners. And the rules of ownership are more or less a job description for owners, if you will. What's the owner's job to do here? because if there's nobody at the wheel with any kind of a vision and nobody's checking if we're making any money and we're not making money and nobody's doing anything to develop the people to make that profit we need to make, then we're kind of a ship that doesn't have a pilot or a captain in it. And the final thing is the rules of employeeship, which is to say that everything here is done by design. There's some things that we have, everybody has a little bit of choice on how you're going to do things, but there's certain things where there is it's non-negotiable. That if you're saying that this is a drug-free workplace and you're putting it in your vision and your marketing that this is a drug-free workplace, you better watch what you're promising, because your best employee who gets involved with drugs means that he's fired. Make sense? Or he goes into rehab, if you will. So some kind of a situation has to take place. If you're saying we're drug-free, if somebody finds out that they're doing drugs, you have to make a decision. What's going to happen in my owner's job description to develop a person? Am I going to develop them or cut them loose?
Right.
If they just wind up doing drugs and something like that. Makes sense?
And you also can't do that for one and not do it for everybody.
So when you're creating rules, I guess my best advice is be careful when you're creating the rules, because don't create rules of employeeship, for instance, that you're not willing to enforce. So if you're saying to wear a uniform, but you're willing to let one person not wear a uniform and everybody else has to, then it is simply not a rule anymore. Now it's just a suggestion.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's really not a rule. And I guess it's okay if we don't wear. Jerry never wears a uniform. How come I got to wear one? My pants don't fit either. Next thing you know, nobody wears a uniform. And so if you feel strongly about the uniform the way we look, then you need to enforce that rule, no matter who the employee is. Make sense? Now, so my advice is, don't make a rule about it unless everybody is on the same page, and that when you first train somebody that they've been trained on, they understand it. And even taking photographs or making people, like on a service ticket, here's how we do a service ticket. Have the employee fill out a service ticket when you start out. So one of the biggest things I'm going to tell you when you set rules, have people walk through it first as a prototype before you make it an actual rule. Does that make sense there?
Yep.
Because if you just set rules indiscriminately without having people who have tried to do this first or prototype a change that creates a rule, then it's going to create things that don't work, and then naturally things that don't work, people never want to participate in. Make sense?
Yeah, very good.
Well, that's all we have time for now. I just want to say, Julie, thank you so much for joining me on this call. It's one of the things that I have a passion for, which is to be productive as a company, to set the ground rules and in every aspect of the company. And thanks so much for joining me here.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And I just wanted to let all of you know out there that there's never been a time in our history of our world where people need pure motive service providers more now than ever. So thank you all for being on our call today. Please contact us at contractorselling.com or come to a total immersion seminar and join us at our live training programs. You can always call us or email us. It'd be a pleasure and honor to help everybody who's watching here today. Goodbye, everybody. Excellence is the result of doing three things and doing them every day: training, coaching, and accountability. These are the building blocks you'll need to perform world-class service. Being the best communicator doesn't come naturally, and most people quit when they hit that first barrier. I can tell you that the top 5% work on one thing they can control. That one thing is the effort they put into learning, practicing, and creating new habits. No one will ever have the passion that we have to push you across the goal line. We won't quit on people who believe in themselves. Do you care enough to try something different? If you do, your family, your company, and your industry will be glad you did. You'll leave a legacy of pure motive service that will live on for generations to come.